Imagine you are living in ancient China. You have promised to meet someone before the city gates close for the night, but you have no phone, no wristwatch, and no digital clock hanging on the wall. So how do you know whether you still have time? The answer is more complicated than simply looking at the sun. In ancient China, time could be read from a shadow, measured by dripping water, burned into a trail of incense, or announced by drums from a city tower. Different tools worked in different places, for different people, and at different times of day. Together, they created a surprisingly sophisticated system for organizing life. First, ancient Chinese time was not divided exactly like ours. Today, we think in hours and minutes. In many periods of Chinese history, the day was divided into 12 major periods called shichen. Each was roughly equal to 2 modern hours. They were named Zi, Chao, Yin, Mao, and the rest of the 12 earthly branches. So if someone promised to meet you at Chen time, they did not mean 7:43 inches the morning. They meant a broader part of the morning. That is because ancient timekeeping was often about coordinating people, not measuring every second. A farmer needed to know when to begin work. An official needed to know when to report for duty. Guards needed to change shifts. A city needed to know when its gates would open and close. For all of that, people needed more than a vague feeling that it was probably late. They needed instruments. The simplest clock was a shadow. People noticed very early that a vertical stick casts a shadow that changes direction and length as the sun moves across the sky. This observation led to instruments such as the Guibiao and the sundial. The Guibiao was not just an ancient clock. It was an astronomical tool. By carefully measuring a shadow around noon throughout the year, officials could help determine directions, seasons, and the calendar. That made it extremely important. In an agricultural society, knowing the seasons was not a luxury. Plant too early, and frost might damage the crops. Plant too late, and the growing season could be lost. Measuring the sun helped governments organize calendars, farming, taxation, and rituals. A sundial was more directly useful for telling the time during the day. A pointer cast a shadow over a marked surface, indicating the part of the day. But there was an obvious problem. What happened when the sky was cloudy? Or when the sun went down? A shadow clock becomes useless in the dark. So ancient Chinese timekeepers turned to something that could keep moving after sunset: water. One of the most important timekeeping devices in ancient China was the water clock, often called a clepsydra or luke. The basic idea was simple. Water flowed at a controlled rate from one vessel to another. As the water level rose or fell, a marked scale showed how much time had passed. But making a reliable water clock was not simple at all. Water does not always flow evenly. The pressure changes as the level drops. Cold weather can freeze it. Tiny changes in an outlet can affect the result. So, over centuries, Chinese engineers developed more complicated systems with multiple vessels. Water moved through several containers before reaching the final measuring vessel, helping regulate the flow. These clocks mattered especially for official timekeeping and astronomy. In the Song dynasty, time measurement was part of a larger state system involving calendars, astronomical observations, and official announcements. Time was not merely personal, it was political. If the government declared the calendar, organized ceremonies, and announced the watches of the night, then controlling time was also a way of organizing society. But even a water clock had limits. It needed maintenance. It needed water. And in freezing weather, it could fail. So people found another way to measure the passing of time. They burned it. Imagine entering a quiet room at night. Instead of hearing a ticking clock, you smell incense slowly burning. In ancient China, incense could be used as a timer. A stick of incense could be made to burn at a predictable rate. By marking sections along it, a person could estimate how much time had passed. More elaborate incense clocks used powdered incense arranged in lines, spirals, or decorative patterns. Some even worked like alarms. At a chosen point along the incense trail, a thread could hold small metal balls or bells above a metal tray. When the burning incense reached the thread snapped, the bells fell, and suddenly, the room had an alarm clock. This was not just a clever novelty. Incense clocks worked at night, did not require sunlight, and could provide fragrance at the same time. They were especially useful in a world where the night was divided into watches. A guard on duty did not need to know it was exactly 2:17 inches the morning. He needed to know when his watch ended, when the next patrol began, or when it was time to sound a signal. A measured trail of incense could do that. Still, most people did not own a precision clock. When we hear about water clocks, sundials, and incense alarms, it is tempting to imagine every household owning elegant timekeeping devices. That was not the reality. Large and accurate instruments were often associated with government offices, astronomical institutions, wealthy households, temples, military sites, mines, or cities. Ordinary people often relied on simpler signals: the position of the sun, the sound of a market opening, the ringing of a bell, the beating of a drum, the call of a watchman. In a large city, public time mattered. Gates could close at night. Curfews could restrict movement. Officials, merchants, guards, and residents all needed shared signals. For many people, the sound from a tower was more useful than owning a clock. You did not need to see the mechanism. You only needed to hear the message. Then, Western mechanical clocks began arriving in China during the late Ming and early Qing periods, often through contact with European missionaries. They did not depend on sunlight, flowing water, or burning incense. Their moving parts could keep time more continuously and conveniently. At first, such clocks were rare and expensive. They were associated with diplomacy, court culture, and elite curiosity. They did not instantly replace older methods of telling time. For a long time, the shadow, the water clock, the incense trail, and the mechanical clock existed side by side. So how did ancient China tell time? Not with one invention, but with an entire ecosystem. By day, people could read the sun. At night, water clocks and incense clocks could continue the count. In cities, drums, bells, and watchmen turned private measurements into public signals. And behind all of it was a simple human need that has never changed. You needed to know when to wake up, when to work, when to meet someone, and, perhaps most urgently, whether you still had time to get home before the gates closed.